Here's the thing, folks. I just want to first make it clear that uh, I'm not saying I have all the answers or any of the answers. I'm just saying that these are questions, these videos that I make are questions that have come to my mind. And I think we should talk about. It's more healthy to talk about these questions that have come to my mind with the kind of answers that has come to my mind. Now let's see what you think. But at least let's recognize the questions. Let's recognize that there is a question as to why the pink skins were the only race who have decided to leave their own continent and try to, bring themselves and their families and their social structure and their governmental structure and extend it to other parts of Earth, which they obviously didn't really weren't part of the local, texture of the land. And the most heinous of them all was the British, the one with the most colonies. These are the guys that, once everybody realized what these guys have done in terms of colonialism, nobody should be giving them Security Council chairs, because they have done the most damage to the nations of the world, in terms of, labor, in terms of taking away their labor, free labor, or very cheap labor, very cheap material, give them little money for their goods, as little as we can get away with it, then come and make something and then sell it back to them for 10 times the value, and try to run the whole thing in our favor. Who is our favor? Who is our? Well, the British. The whole idea that this question that I have come, for example, this is an example that I'm giving. I don't have the answer, but the question is this: why are the British at all given any kind of stature in the world? They were they committed the most heinous acts imaginable in order to subjugate people of other nations, and are still at it, and they're still at it. And they're taking Uncle Sam the wrong way, and helping, convincing Uncle Sam that subjugation of these motherfuckers over there is the right thing to do. Everybody voted for Iraqi war. Just because we can go have our way with them, that doesn't mean we should go have our way with them. I mean, one can do a lot of things, especially if one gets drunk and is a cowboy, can do a lot of heinous acts. But what kind of form of government gives the keys to a cowboy, and then everybody else, instead of doing criminal investigations and seeing who was responsible, just take over, kick some ass just because we can? Iraqis were never involved in 9/11, and they just said, yeah, it's a good idea to go in. It's a good idea. He's a bad guy. In whose neighborhood? Well, he's keeping order. Bad guy, good guy. There's no bad guy, good guy in politics. That's why Putin was laughing at this whole idea that, oh, you're giving me the black hat, you're the white hat, and I'm the black hat. There is no white hat. There is no white hat and black hat in politics. It's just more my interest or more your interest. Whose interest is going to be, put above all? Well, nobody's interest should be put above everybody else. Everything should be negotiated. And, people should, start mixing fucking together, geographically start mixing together, that hopefully this idea of land being such an important thing and identity that goes with that land being such an important thing. If you fucking people start traveling a little more, facilitate traveling between your countries, everybody facilitate traveling between countries, and that just opens the door that you're no longer foreign. People, even if their people are encouraged to travel between each country, and have to stay there for a period of time, so be it. Pay the expense. That's no problem. Cut back from the military. Send your people, make love. Just don't, and if you keep mixing together, so this idea of nationality slowly goes away. If you have a cousin on the other side of the fucking border, now this border could be the state next door, or the country next door, or the town next door. If you have a cousin there, it's less of a chance getting, being in favor of blowing on the other side because you think your cousin might be there, fucking it might die. So you see what I'm saying? Apparently you guys are very, us humans are very, very self-grandizing, saying we are so important that, we need to, survive no matter what. It's sort of like us above all. And this us above all, that's the idea, is mostly a pink skin idea, because that's, the pink skins are decided to, the British and some French, some Spanish, the ones who had access to warm waters decided to go next door and say hi, and maybe, kick them out, shoot the neighbor, take over his house and maybe his wife. And you decided to mix blood like that. Why mix blood like that when you can mix blood, not by raping, but by making love? So send tourists so they can make love overseas. A lot more understanding can come when your tourists are if you're taking Jesus' message goes much better with tourists. Goodwilling, spending tourists. It takes a much better, it takes Jesus much better around, or whoever you're advertising. I don't care who you're advertising. You're advertising the Muhammad, you're advertising Jesus, you're advertising Jehovah, whoever you're advertising. Well, it happens much better if, you do it with tourists, right? People who actually, trade, and because of that trade, you find out, oh, such nice people. Because the Iranians are, they love Americans. And the reason is because they had such good memories from when America was in charge over there. America was very efficient, very systematic and good governance. Well, Uncle Sam, the locals decided to learn their own way, how to run their own shit. Do you mind? Let them do this. Just they want to run their own shit. Yeah, I know they don't know what they're doing, and they're nasty, but they're locals. In a nasty neighborhood, you have nasty neighbors. You can't be the nice neighbor in a fucking nasty neighborhood. So, and you know that. That's why, a lot of nasty things that the Arabs do, Uncle Sam, looks the other way. Because he knows it's a nasty neighborhood. But, it goes back to who's your boy over there. Whatever your boy does is, it does bad is not recognized. If they let their women drive in 21st century, after 70 years, 80 years, 100 years after other people let their women drive, it's still that celebrated, sort of like, because they're allies. Let's celebrate they're letting their women drive. So the point is this: you folks, you got to communicate a lot more and let your people communicate with each other a lot more. But your media has very lopsided this communication. The media, which is supposed to be the eyes and the ears of the population, the media has, closed their eyes on some issues and, double-wided their eyes on some other issues that were, more favorable to the rich and less favorable to the labor. And things have been going on just fine for a large portion of the population, but another portion of the population is suffering. Because of no investment in education, not really understanding this education is what is going to make the future, and instead investing money in military operations on the other side of the fucking planet, because we can. Well, that money is coming from somewhere. The money is coming from education. Money is coming from housing. Money that has been taxed, but it's not being spent on the society that has been taxed. It's being spent on fireworks on the other side of the fucking planet. Literally fireworks. Fireworks that, kills lots of people. But it's fireworks. And you're thinking to yourself, okay, they're collecting the, human productivity over here that is being created in this great economy. This human productivity, we take it, we give a little back for education and a little back for housing and a little back for healthcare, and you're on your own, motherfuckers, and we use the biggest chunk of it in fireworks operation on the other side of the planet. Fireworks. And because some locals, there are always locals who don't, they have some kind of fucking independent ideas. You're gonna have that until Star Wars time. In many years in the past or many years in the future, it always ends there. This disputes you're going to have forever. There is always going to be some locals who, don't want to pay up, feel insulted, feel like they matter, feel a little independence. You're going to have that. It was there, with Darth Vader on the side of the Central Order, and his son that, on the side of the revolutionaries, the good guys, those guys who thought they should matter. Well, Uncle Sam, you started as the son, you're ending up as the father. Dude, and it's sort of proud of it, because we do it because we can. Yes, you have the greatest minds in the world working for you because you have created a nice, stable environment for them. If they had nice, stable environments back home, they would have gone home, or they would have never left home if they had nice, stable environments. But they didn't have nice, stable environments, so they had to leave home and, You got a lot of the brains. So yes, advantage to you. But Uncle Sam, other people, other societies, they are at their own level of evolution, social evolution. You cannot rush social evolution. No one can. No one can rush social evolution. It just doesn't work. Either they're at that stage or they're not at that stage, or are they still collective minded in their societies, or individuality has any importance in their society. But this whole idea, willy-nilly, a rancher from Texas who's always lived in the suburbs of Texas being given the keys to the Corvette, or the chieftain, or Abrams, and telling and giving him the idea that yes, let's bring them East Texas. Let's bring the motherfuckers over there, East Texas. If you remove the guy who's keeping order, then it becomes East Texas. So, and selling this idea, you think the sons and daughters of those who moved on outside of the tribe would have the same personality, be at the same social evolution level, and have some understandings of individualism. These two are not the same. Uncle Sam's land, which is made of those who are willing to break from the tribe, and everywhere else in the world are where, Europe, Eurasia and Africa are the ones who stayed behind in the tribe. So you think the people the form of government that is appropriate for an area of geography that was built by those who were willing to break from the tribe and move over and take over, their mentality, the form of government that they are comfortable with, they are at the level of understanding, their system of government should be the same as the system of government in some shithole that the guys those tribes, those people, those individuals who chose to stay and not move for 3,000 years. Well, their perspective of life is not the same. So their form of government cannot be the same. You know why their perspective of life is not the same? Is because you don't mix enough. You don't mix enough. If you did mix enough, well, internet is helpful in mixing, but if you did mix enough, you would understand that eventually people will catch up, but you have to mix enough. But the point is, but the solution to not, society is not being up to par, forms of government not being up to par, therefore they are bad. There's a timeline. Depending on how old the society is, it takes time for the society to, evolve, reach a certain, level of progress. And some societies, like, the Arabs, it's just never a good idea to wear anything beside what the fuck they're wearing, a white robe. So just because, the guy is not wearing a tuxedo, because, that's just is not gonna work in that heat. It's just not happening. And, so the point is this, that certain things you cannot change. So certain traditions, and that is, for example, the tradition of covering up, it's gonna take time. Even when they do, uncover those countries that have left, women to themselves, to whether they want to wear a veil or not. In many of those, a lot of time they do actually, because the sun is a killer. And have you noticed that those countries that have this thing has become part of the religion, this covering? They just happen to be in a very, sunny side of the world. The northerners, easily got rid of their heavy clothing as soon as they came indoors, because, the only problem was the heat and the cold. But those people, the sun is always quite hard. So they have adopted this fucking idea of covering with a piece of cloth so you don't burn. Then it has become part of their tradition and part of their religion, and now they're holding on to it. What do you want me to do? But the whole idea of going and killing a bunch of them to set free another bunch of them that now do not have lost a generation or two, it just fucking doesn't make sense. But I'm telling you, if George W. Bush was forced to spend 2 years, if George W. Bush was forced to spend 2 years of, a service to Uncle Sam, at the service of Uncle Sam as a tourist in a draft-like environment, here, my boy, you're drafted, you have 2 years of tourist duty, and he was sent to live in, I don't know, Zambia, and do whatever he likes. If he wants to do business there, he can do business there. If he wants to, have fun, he can have fun. If he wants to go to university, he can go to university. But it has to, be in that country. Believe me, if George W. Bush would have spent 2 years of his life, forced to, in a draft, to spend 2 years of his life as a service to Uncle Sam, to live in somewhere that is not Uncle Sam, just as a citizen tourist, to be informed, so Uncle Sam would have so many more people informed of the situation on the ground, so Uncle Sam can help, keep the peace much faster than, why go about it in a covert way of collecting information, trying to find out what's going on over there? Just send your citizens there, tourists, and accept their citizens, tourists. You don't need to do any of this covertly. Just, introduce yourself and spend money and have fun. You learn. And they learn from you. If you want to spread your religion, I don't care what fucking religion. If you want to spread your religion, this is one way. If you want to spread how good you are, how Jesus-y you are, or how Muhammadi you are, or how you fucky you are, go, be a tourist, introduce yourself, and show them how good you are. How good a friend you are, how good a pal you are, how good a buddy you are, how good a spender you are, how transfer to them, my American friends, transfer to them this idea of individualism, which is so important to you. Transfer this idea to them via tourists. I'm sure if the idea is spreading the idea of individualism is good, which is the basic idea of democracy, and the basic idea of capitalism is individual. If the individual has the initiative and the cognitive and the opportunity, the individual can be successful. And in terms of democracy, also individual has the right to vote, have the right to have an opinion for how the well running of the tribe, and he can vote. Well, what that has got you? And since Nixon, you have had Nixon was Nixon was a character. He was dishonest, to say the least, which is for everybody is clear. Dishonesty seems to be the main line through many. Although Nixon was the last one who actually had the thing to step down. Had the dignity to stand down, or else, Clinton should have stepped down over Monica Lewinsky. He should have stepped down. At that level of governance, if you really screw up, you have to step down. Doesn't matter how big a balls you have. But the right thing is, the moral thing is to step down. George W. Bush went into 2 wars and proud of it. Still, although evidence shows that, at least 600,000 casualties, 600,000 people, humans, brown skins, were the collateral damage. Direct, indirect, the number is between 600,000 and 3 million that directly or indirectly have been eliminated. Stop breathing. Done. So when you hear that, it's sort of like, okay, what did they get? Did it become East Texas? Were you expecting East Texas? You were expecting East Texas. You sold East Texas. You said, if we remove Saddam, we're going to have East Texas. We're going to be free. Well, did it happen? It's not a surprise if you would have spoken to, sociologists before removing, putting your holsters on. If you have spoken to one or many, hundreds, everybody, sociologists or anybody working in the social fields, if you had consulted with them that whether it's a good idea to take over a structure like that, what would happen, is a good idea or a bad idea, if you had run it by some people who actually know shit about this stuff, they all would have told you that no, do not touch it. Do not touch it, you're not going to fix it. Why don't you go about it and they all would have the same solution. Why don't you go about it by trading with them more? Start with tourists, start with trading, just give them stuff. And instead, as a condition of giving them stuff, allow us to come in, allow us to spend money in your land. Is that okay? We want to send some tourists. Believe me, no country will turn down real tourists. Why? Why would you want to turn down tourists? And nobody will say no, Uncle Sam. This is all you have to do. Bring tourists. Send tourists. Send tourists, Uncle Sam. Send tourists. And you get a lot, and Uncle Sam, you get much more than you have sent. You send boys and girls out as 2 years of mandatory tourist duty, you send boys and girls out, and you get back after 2 years, after he had to, spend 2 years trying to communicate with that society, learn from that society, teach that society. After 2 years of that, or even just his existence in that society, in a very different society than East Texas, suburban East Texas, or a very rich suburban East Texas, to a very, a conservative shed hole back in the old countries, then, a lot things would be much more clearer to Joe from East Texas. Another perspective in life, another better understanding of, better appreciation of his own home. After 2 years, Uncle Sam, you will get some appreciative citizens, and your voting records would go through the roof. I can assure you. Because of this communication, because of your citizens understanding, everything comes into perspective. After 2 years of shed hole, after 2 years of shed hole, everything comes into perspective. Your life will be worth more. Your conditions, your standard of living will be worth more, and it would be appreciated more, and the life of those shitty people in those shed holes would be of, concern to you as well, because you may still have some friends there. You see what I'm saying? It's the whole idea is that you want a better planet, right? Start traveling. Facilitate tourism. Facilitate traveling. Your citizens, 2 years mandatory tourist service. For the motherland, you have to go into somebody else's motherland and live there for 2 years, and whatever you want to do. Here is $2,000, here is $3,000 a month, here is $2,000 a month, your stipend. But you have to live there, just like a soldier. You pay a soldier to live in Germany for 2 years, 4 years, whatever. You pay a tourist a salary to live in Germany for 2 years. And between the ages of 18 and 30, 18 and 35. Right when the guy has left education and wants to enter work, right there, 2 years mandatory draft tourist service. After the primary education, 18 years, now we got this, 2 years there, and then come back. Especially at that time, you will get a lot better educated people too, Uncle Sam, because then after that they would have a chance to enter university after that education. After that 2 years of tourist service, they go back. They go back home in Uncle Sam's land, and then they have to start university, start their way in life, work or more education, and now you will get people with much more clear-eyed regarding the world around them. So based on that more clear eye, they would choose what they want to study. And education should be free. If you spend less on arms, you can, make education free. You know, because it's just educating your society. It should not be up for debate. It's good to have an educated society. That's period. There shouldn't be any point of speech behind that. We must have an educated society. What do you mean it's expensive? No, it's not expensive. 11 aircraft carriers, upkeep of 11 aircraft carriers and more arriving every day, upkeep of that is expensive. Raising the teacher salary so you can raise the teacher quality. I repeat again. By raising the teacher salary, you will get much more qualified teachers. That's a given. It's a given. It just makes sense. More qualified people will, consider being teachers. And then you have the educational institutions have their pick of how good the teachers they want. Do they want a professor to teach their, fifth graders? Yeah, that's a very good idea. But that professor right now is doing something in commerce, is doing some, that genius is doing something that's, it's about making money, not about bettering the conditions. It's about making money. And love capitalism, but it is what it is. This idea of markets controlling everything, Uncle Sam, markets, certain things markets could care less about. Healthcare of the sick, markets could care less. What do I care if the sick are they die or they don't die? For me, it's about the bottom line. Well, then we understand that markets don't work for healthcare. Then you have to find out what else don't market work for. Well, markets don't work in politics because money is not speech, and money is much more persuasive than speech. Then so the market, a lot of things, Uncle Sam has left it to the market. Education, health, housing, these things, market. Let the politics. Politics is market. It's sort of like how much money can you invest in this product that has this message, and how important is this message for you, and how much you're willing to pay for that message to be carried out, or that policy to be carried out. Then becomes who has more money and who's more, I should say, determined to get their way, so they spend more money on it. More determined to get their way, spend more money on it. So, folks, it's just crazy. You're giving the reins of the society to very rich people, because they decide what messages get spread the loudest, because the media is market oriented. So the very rich people get their say most of the time. Their perspective, the rich people get their perspective most of the time, because CNN doesn't interview homeless people much, but you can find on CNN files, you can find thousands of stories about Paris Hilton over her lifetime till now. Thousands. Here, a little here, a little there. But the homeless Joe, never mentioned. Nobody knows Joe. So that's it. the media is there to, be the mouthpiece of the rich to the poor by telling the poor that it's your fault, your own fault that you're poor and I'm rich. No, it's not. A certain amount of money was created. Let's put it this way: a certain amount of human productivity is created. When humans work together, a certain amount of productivity, human productivity, is created. Now, if one person gets a whole 90% of it because of some, genius of, mathematics, and has kept 90% of this human productivity in the form of profits, and the other guy has just been paid for his labor, his time, which should be very cheap. Okay, his time should be very cheap. Why? So this productivity that has been created is not, much of it is not given to them. Most of it is kept. Piecey, a small piece is given as for labor costs. So, and you think this is a good form of, running your politics on, running your education on, running your healthcare on, but we gotta police these motherfuckers real good. No education, no healthcare, no housing, but we gotta police them well, really good, top of the line. That was the basic idea of Trump. And we sort of like, no, the state doesn't have any responsibility for your education. The state does not have any responsibility for your health care. The state does not have any responsibility for your housing. The state doesn't have any responsibility. Fuck you. But we have responsibility. The state has responsibility to, start some fireworks on the other side of the fucking planet to prove a point. A point that a guy from East Texas wants to prove to a guy from Fallujah. And then blame the other locals. That if these guys get if these guys are, don't give them water, not even water, fuck them. If anybody, is not working with us, don't even. It becomes East Asia. That's exactly what happened. That Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, the whole thing became, you got problem with one of the neighbors, and then, of course, the whatever, if they have to exchange in their borders, because the border peoples are basically their cousins, so they start exchanging things to whatever these guys need, and whatever those guys need, they continue exchanging. So if some of the things that they want, they need, they're paying to have certain things. The guy, his cousin on the other side of the border, is not going to not sell him. It's his cousin. So, folks, Uncle Sam, the best thing to do is to be the shiny city on the hill and send tourists out to distribute this idea of individualism, the idea of democracy. You think democracy is the best way to go? Well, the recent presidents of these, I love you, Uncle Sam, you know that, but the recent presidents, I don't know, my historical memory doesn't go farther than Nixon, but I don't know them, I haven't read up on them, but within my lifetime, you have had a bunch of characters. Dishonest, unqualified. Well, Trump was unqualified. Bush Jr. was uneducated. Bush Sr. Um, was a bitter man. Clinton was dishonest, to say the least. Nixon was dishonest, to say the least. It is sort of like, I mean, when you say I have the best product, we have this thing in the shed holes. The guy is selling. If the guy is selling watermelons by the road, you say that it's a customary to say, I will buy only if you break it open and I see it's actually red. Then I buy. So this whole idea that we got the best system, but see what happened. The first one sent some people actually stealing shit. Then the other one came in that, was an actor, I guess. He was, the whole time he was acting as a respectable gentleman. It was an act. He was not a decision maker. He was an actor. He was not an intellectual. He was an actor. He was not a great thinker. He was an actor. He was not a great problem solver. He was an actor. It's sort of like, are you fucking people kidding me? He's putting out a great act, but the problems are not solved by him. The problems are solved by, the guys behind the curtain. And who chooses the guys behind the curtain? The rich people choose the guys behind the curtain. So the rich people, the owners of, this game that you call capitalism, it has certain people, it's like Monopoly. Certain people win the game or constantly winning the game. The cash keeps piling up. Imagine a Monopoly game that, you never are out of that Monopoly money. You got a printer press going on and continuously this game is continuously played. That's capitalism for you. And you see this, on one corner you got somebody sitting on a pile of cash, like for example the owners of Apple, and then on the other corner, in the same state in California, on the other corner you have homeless because apparently they can't afford to live where they were born anymore. So if they were born there, they probably, if they migrate to Mexico, they have a higher living standards than if they stay in where they were born. So Uncle Sam, with having all these problems, going to the other side of the planet, trying to prove a point, show them how it's done, how it's done. The citizens who have produced, their productivity should be, that is collected as taxes, should be spent on the same people. The people who work and make a productivity, create a human productivity, the fruits of their labors should be spent on the same society for the betterment of the same society. Not to, for fireworks on the other side of the planet. Yeah. That doesn't, make a difference. Usually results into worse results. Any kind of force that has to be applied, Uncle Sam, it makes the situation unstable. And here's the thing, my pink-skinned friends, especially in Uncle Sam's land. Here's the thing. I love you, man. I love the pink skin. I love the Uncle Sam. But I love you. But you cannot, if you have the right answer for you and for me, it isn't necessarily the right answer for everyone, because the idea of social cohesiveness, the idea of the necessities of geography, how, as we went over it with the covering over the head of these Arabs, the necessities of geography and the depth of its history, wherever they are, even in the Arab land, as shitty as they are, they have a very long history. Very long history. So they are also, their societies are in a way, in that shitty history, they have become a certain way. They also should be left alone. They should be left alone. They're going to be backwards, yes. Do you want to bring them forward? If you insist, why don't you send them tourists? As in a draft system, as a duty for Uncle Sam to go and spread the idea of individualism in the Arabian Peninsula. Yeah. You get a much better much better citizens, and the world gets an idea how good Americans are, and everything works out much better. Any of your citizens that go in this way, they want to spread their own religion, let them. Do whatever you want. You want to spread your religion, go right ahead. You want to visit bars every night and have fun, go right ahead. You get the same pay for 2 years, whether you do anything with your life or you don't. But even the guy who's gone, to a bar every night, after 2 years he's going to be he might have an alcohol problem, but he would be speaking at least 2 languages, the new language very well. He may have a drunk accent in his language, but he will learn it well. But so much comes of it. So much comes of it. So much. The point is this: the only solution to this problem is tourism. You gotta travel to each other's countries and create more bonds across the planet. Across the planet. Instead of having soldiers in Japan, just sign an agreement that they accept, tourists. A certain number of tourists every year. equivalent to the number of your soldiers. Take the soldiers out and send tourists to live there for 2 years. Learn, just learn Japanese. Learn the culture. Learn another perspective. Learn efficiency. Tourism, that's the solution. And in my view, everybody has an idea. Love to hear yours. Love you, Uncle Sam.